Okay, this is a video about Black history, and this isn't the same old Black history that you'll see on the History Channel or PBS or anything like that. This video is just a little bit about Black history before slavery or Black history besides slavery and the Civil Rights Movement. Sure, slavery and the Civil Rights Movement are a part of our culture and a part of our history, but um, there's more to our history as Black people than just being slaves and then fighting and getting dogs sicked on us and the Civil Rights Movement. So this video is about just to give a little bit more information about our history and to show that we're not the descendants of slaves. We're the descendants of kings and scientists and beautiful people, not broke down people. One of the things that we can start with is this concept that the Egyptians were not black. Actually, the Egyptians were absolutely black. People often make the mistake of confusing the population of Egypt today with the Egyptians of the ancient Egyptians. It's tantamount to saying that the population of the United States today is the same as the population of the United States 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago. You'll see two different groups of populations in the United States, and you see the same thing with the ancient Egyptians. Now, first of all, the ancient Egyptians didn't call themselves Egyptians. In fact, the name Egypt wasn't even associated with that land until the Greeks came. Actually, it was from the name Egyptos, which we now call Egypt. So the ancient Egyptians would never have known the name Egypt. Actually, what they called themselves were the Kemet or Kim-Au, or really just a Kim or Kim-Au. Which, in a certain translation says black people. Now, take note, the people, when they refer to themselves as Kim or Kim Au, these words are basically translated into black people. When they referred to the country, they called it the Kemet, which is basically saying black land or land of black people. Now, there is an argument that says that Kemet means black soil, but there is an argument that says the exact opposite, and that's still being argued. But when we say the Kim or Kim Au, that basically, according to the Egyptian language at that time, basically says the black people. And there's really not really a lot of scholarly debate to the opposite of the opposite. So that's a very interesting thing that a lot of people don't know, that they refer to themselves as black. Also, if you look at images of the Egyptians, images that they presented of themselves, they would have what we call black African features. If you look at images where the paint still survives or the statues still survive, I don't know of anyone who can actually look at them and say that they have anything other than black African features. There's been many paintings and paintings, let's focus on paintings, where the ink survives. You'll see that the skin color is a very, very dark black, you know, black African skin color. At no time were they presented as having a sort of a light or a sort of middle caramel skin tone, which may be more common among Middle Eastern people. They clearly were black Africans. If you look at the images on their statues, you look at their facial features, they had the distinct, the big lips and big nose, for lack of a better term, that black Africans have. That's quite common. So basically, just in a nutshell, no way were they the Greek images. No way were they the sort of Hollywood Caucasian idea. They were clearly dark-skinned black African people. Another person in history that you probably never heard of is someone by the name of Thomas Alexandre Dumas. This was a black general in Napoleon's army way back in the 1700s. That's right, Napoleon had a black general serving with him. So that's also something that you didn't probably never heard of and never knew about. In fact, he had a son named Alexandre Dumas. His son, who's also would be considered black, who is black, he wrote several books you probably heard of. One of them is called The Three Musketeers. That's right, black man wrote The Three Musketeers. He also wrote The Count of Monte Cristo. So we have, two major books that are considered classics written by black men. So there's a little bit of tidbit information that you probably didn't know. These guys weren't slaves. These guys were generals and best-selling novelists way back hundreds of years ago. Another bit of information about history was a group of people in history called the Moors. And this was a group of people who were predominantly Muslim from the African continent. Some say just North African, but really more West African also, who basically conquered and ruled various parts of Europe for hundreds of years, mainly in Spain, but certain parts of France and Portugal, and even, parts of Italy also were ruled for hundreds of years by the Moors. Now, the Moors were black people, or the vast majority of the Moors were black Africans. There, has been numerous depictions of them, and whenever you see these depictions of them, they are black-skinned Africans. Now, there were more Middle Eastern people as Moors. There was smaller groups within that, but generally Moors were black. Rembrandt, the painter, did a painting of them, of basically two black men, and the name of the painting is Two Moors. Shakespeare did a play called Othello, who is a Moor soldier, because Moors were very good warriors. And whenever you see depictions of Othello, you see him usually played by a black man, or in those days you see you see an actor wearing black paint, face body paint, to make him look like he's a black man. But whenever you see Moors depicted in ancient history or in ancient European history, they're generally black. In fact, and these weren't just some barbarians like the Visigoths. These guys ruled certain parts of Europe for hundreds of years. There are castles left behind. There's Moorish castles. So there's another group of black people in history that we really barely really know about or really teach about in our schools in the United States, but were clearly not slaves, but rulers, were kings and had kingdoms in Europe, for hundreds of years. So again, there's another example that we are not the descendants of slaves. We are the descendants of warriors, rulers, and kings, and people who had kingdoms. So that's a little bit of another little extra bit of information that you probably didn't know. Okay, and to sort of wrap up this video, I'm going to touch on another point that we don't really often think about. And I'm going to talk about black people in the Bible. Now, this is not a religious discussion or really a religious lesson, but just sort of a reference that back in the days of the Bible, if we're going to take the Bible as a reference, black people were there too. If you look at Hollywood, basically every character in every person, every actor who portrays a biblical or an ancient Old Testament character is always a Caucasian. And actually, some of them were obviously clearly not. One of the people I want to kind of talk about, so let me just kind of talk about a few people in the Bible that were black that you may not have even known. Now, one of the people, or the first one I want to mention, is Moses. Well, really, the wife of Moses. Now, I'm not directly claiming that Moses was black, although he did grow up in Egypt and he was a descendant of the Hebrew people, so there were certainly people of color. But his wife is who I'm going to talk about. And his wife was named in the Bible. She was an Ethiopian. See, in those days, a man still could have several wives, and he had an Ethiopian wife. I know in all the movies they only show one wife, but he had a black Ethiopian wife. In fact, his brother Aaron and his sister Miriam didn't even like that she was an Ethiopian woman. But and they were cursed because of that, because they didn't like the fact that she was Ethiopian. Translation, she was black. But Moses had a black Ethiopian wife. Another person in the Bible is a party called the Queen of Sheba. She also was from Ethiopia. She was a queen who came and visited Solomon and had some questions to ask Solomon in all his wisdom. So there's a black queen actually listed there. So that's someone else. Another person that you may not have heard about is a person by the name of Simon of Cyrene. Now, in the movies, Simon of Cyrene always almost portrayed as a more of a Middle Eastern guy, or a Caucasian guy. But in fact, it's almost universally accepted that upon research, Simon was probably a black man also. So that's another black man that you probably never knew. Also, there is a person referred to as an Ethiopian man whom the apostle Philip baptizes. So we have here one of the earliest converts to Christianity, besides the actual disciples themselves, was a black man who then later went out and basically went out and started preaching what he believed and what he learned on through basically, the black lands and black people. So again, black people are certainly had a hand in the early spread of Christianity. So that's something also that you didn't know, or at least we don't really teach about. So if you look at that time and look at the people, you clearly see that there were plenty of black people in the times of the Bible. There were plenty of black people who were there and had a hand in some of the big events of Christianity. They just didn't really want to portray them on the big screen. So I just thought I wanted to give you a few tidbits about black history and to find out that we are not the descendants of slaves. We are more than just getting dogs sicked on us and more than picking cotton. We were pivotal in the historical events and the turning of humanity itself, and that we in fact had a hand in world history, not just small amounts of black American history. Bye for now.